Hello, this is Eric Bobrow. In this Archicad video tutorial, I'll show you an interesting combination of Archicad's features that allow you to do energy analysis on buildings of any size using built-in options such as schedules, graphic overrides, and properties that were introduced into recent versions of Archicad. Here we have MasterTemplate sample project, and here we have a report for energy analysis for different orientations, for doors and windows, their opening area, and the wall area. This can be worked for any size project. Now what it requires is that there be a property that is added to your environment that is available for doors and windows for orientation. And of course it can be the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. It could be numeric directions or numbers for degrees, but basically you can sort the summary based on the orientation and calculate these numbers that can be then put into Title 24 in California, applications or submissions, and Energy Plus and other analysis tools. Now, how is this done, and how do you know that you have it right? In other words, how do we know that all the walls in a particular area are actually designated correctly, and all the doors and windows as well? Well, let me just show you, for example, a graphic override that has been set up here for energy orientation check. When I turn that on, you'll see that all the walls facing one direction have been colored with one color, and in another direction, a different color. And as we rotate around, we have it on this side. However, we do have a little issue here, and that is this window actually was not set correctly. Now, let's look at that on floor plan and see, is this obvious as well? On the floor plan, we can see the normal construction document view, but if I switch my graphic override to the energy orientation check, you can see all the green walls are facing to the east, the red ones are facing to the south, and the yellow ones are facing to the west. If I go up to the upper story, we're going to see similar things, except, oh, there's that window, which was not actually colored in. So if I go select that window, and we look at the properties of the window, we'll see that there's a property that's been added into MasterTemplate, but you can add it into your own environment for the orientation. Right now, this is set to interior, and obviously it's an exterior window, but that's the default until you decide which orientation it is. So I'll say it is a west-facing window. And when I do that, we'll see in a moment that this becomes yellow. It fits in here. And when we go back to that 3D view, this window will become yellow. So now we know that all of the walls and doors and windows have been set correctly. Oh, but we have one other small thing here. This piece of wall, which actually, let's go and select it carefully. This piece of wall, which may not be that critical, it's a small piece and it's underneath, it's in some crawl space or above the ceiling, but still, it hasn't been set correctly. So I'm going to go to the properties here and go to orientation, and again, tell it, oh, this one is west as well. And as soon as I do that, you'll see it changes to that color. So this is a very good visual check that I'm getting the numbers. And if I go back to that schedule here, we'll see a slight change. It's going to update, and the west ones now have additional window in here, and probably an additional little piece of wall has been added as well. So how is this set up, and how can you do that in your own Archicad projects? Let's go to a standard template of Archicad, just out of the box, the US version, and I'll go and draw a box of walls. Let's see. And right now it doesn't really matter if I have what type of wall it is. I'm just going to draw these walls, and I'll put in a door here, and I'll put in a couple of windows. One on this side here, and one on that side. Okay, and we'll just go to 3D and take a look at our little building. Okay, so I want to be able to total up the orientation or the area for each of these faces, and I want to make sure that visually I can tell whether I've designated it properly. So we're going to start by going to the Options menu, to the Property Manager. And in the Property Manager, we're going to create a new property. The new property we're going to call Orientation. And right now it's going into a group called General Settings, General Ratings up here, which is fine. You can choose if you want to put it into some other category, but I'll just say OK. It'll show up down here. And you can see that its default is that it's a string, which means it's text characters. Now I can have it be manually set, but we'll go a little bit further. We'll say that it's going to be an options set of text. In this case, the first option here we'll say is north, and we'll say south, east, west, and we'll add one that is undefined, or we could say interior. Either will work just fine. Now, I'll say that the default value until it's chosen will be undefined. In the other example, it was set as interior. So that means that if we have this set for an element and we haven't actually chosen it, it'll be undefined, and then of course we can add in a value when we're categorizing things. Now, in order to make it available for doors and windows, and walls, we need to go into availability, and I don't want to add it to all things because I don't want to have columns or objects, chairs like that. So I'll just say custom here, and we'll go into the Archicad classifications, and in fact, just type in wall here, and then we'll scroll down into the Archicad classification version 2.0, which was introduced into Archicad 23, and we'll say that we want this for walls, and perhaps we want it for curtain walls as well. And then I'll go here and say that I want it for a door. And I'll say this should be available as a property that we can apply to doors. And one more would be window. And scroll down here and say window. So I'll say OK. So now this property of orientation will be available for these types of elements. So now I can select this wall, and I can go into its settings, and under classifications and properties, we'll see that under general ratings here, there's orientation. And let's call this south here. Now we don't see it change visually, it's just showing the green because it's selected, but later we'll come in and create a graphic override. So we'll go and make the door also have an orientation, and so I can go in here, and this will also be south, and I can go to window. Now, instead of going into the dialog box, I can also go down here to ID and properties in your info box, which by default is down near the bottom, but could be on the far right if you have your info box arrayed left to right. And press down here, and we'll see that we have the orientation south. And I'll take this one, and this wall, we'll make the orientation east, and this wall. So obviously, when you have a larger project, you're going to select a bunch of walls that face the same way and do that. You can do that on the plan. You can also do that in 3D, as we're showing here, which allows you to do multiple stories and can be satisfying, particularly if we've already got the graphic override. Then we can see the color change as we saw earlier. Now, I think I'm going to deliberately leave this one window unset so we can see how we can double check on things. How are we going to double check? Well, we'll go and create a graphic override. So graphic overrides are available by clicking on this graphic override combinations button, or you can go to the document menu to graphic override combinations, and we'll create a new graphic override called energy orientation check. This one will apply some rules. So I'll go here and I'll say that I'd like to add a rule, but all right, there isn't one for what I need, so let's go and edit the rules. Let's go and create something here. So I'm going to create a new graphic override that will be orientation north, and this will allow elements of certain types. Let's say that we want to make it for walls, and we'll put in type again. This is element type, and I'll just add it a couple of more times so that I can say that it's a wall or it is a door or it is a window. So it could be any of those things. So we're saying if it matches those, we want to apply a graphic override. But I have to make one more thing clear. I only want to apply this color or shading if the property called orientation, which I just created, is not undefined, but north. So now I'm saying if it's a wall, door, or window, and it is got an orientation set as north, then what do I want to do? I will say make it have a color. And I don't remember what I had in the other file, but I'll just say make it red here. I'll say that it's going to be filled with some sort of a poche, like 25% here. And we'll make the fill foreground color. And we'll just, for good measure, make it for all of these here. We'll make that the same red here. And I'll just make it opaque as well. So you may play around with these things, but in 3D, I want to make it have a similar color red, and say OK. So this is basically orientation north, is a rule that right now is not included. I will go and say add the new rule that I called, where is it? It is orientation north. So whenever we turn this on, it will invoke that rule. Now I'm going to go and create ones for the other directions, but let's just see now, all of a sudden, the north wall has changed. If I turn off the override, of course it goes away when I turn this back on. Enter its energy orientation check. There we have that. So I can go in here, and now I'll go and edit rules, and I'm going to create duplicates of this just with some different colors. So orientation north, I'll say new one that is a duplicate, but it's going to be orientation east here. And it's going to be a duplicate of that. So it's going to start out with wall, door, and window. But of course now I want to say that it's going to apply if the orientation is east. I can change the color here. Let's say that it's going to be yellow and yellow and yellow. And something similar yellow here. Okay. And actually I could go and instead of just saying okay, I could create new ones right away. So let's go and say a new one that's another duplicate of that one. And we did north and east. We'll do south here. We'll say this one is only invoked when it's south. And we did yellow. Let's do this green. Green, green, and some sort of a green. I'm not sure. We have the MHP generic, or we have some sort of a green somewhere. I'll just use this light green, or dark green. Green is fine there. Okay. And I'll say new one that's going to be a duplicate of that. And this is going to be west. So we'll duplicate this. It's going to be duplicate, and we'll say that it's west. Applies if the orientation is west, and we'll take this to the next color. And let's just give it a pure blue there. Okay, so now I've created those. I need to just add them to the combination. So we'll say this is going to turn on all of these orientation rules like that. And now you can see everything's color-coded. Oh, but now we can see that this window has not been set. So I'll go, and let's just check it on the floor plan, make sure that this is clear. We say, give me the energy orientation check, and we can see everything is nice, matching, except we have this window, and we can do this here in 2D, or we can go in 3D as well and say, oh, that needs to be changed, and go and say this I think is supposed to be. Now let's say that we actually didn't have it undefined, but we had it the wrong one, like north. Now we see red, and this would stand out. Of course, it is not matching the correct orientation. So let's go and change this to east. There. All right, so we've now got a property and a check for validity. Now let's create the schedule for that. So I'll go into the schedules, just go in here for elements, and we'll take any schedule. So I'll just take a door schedule just as a starting point, because really I don't need to use what's here. I'm going to create a new one. I'll go to scheme settings and say that I want a new schedule, and this is going to be energy report. Here it's going to report on elements. Here I don't really care about the ID right now. Am I reporting on all types? No. I want to report on walls. I want to report on the type. Just type in the word type here and click on element type and do that a second time. So now I have all three. I can say walls and doors and windows. Now, an element can't be a wall and a door and a window. It can be a wall or a door or a window. Okay, so that's what we want this schedule to report. Now, in terms of fields, what are we going to have? We may want to say ID here, so element ID might be a good one. Of course, we want to report the orientation here. So there's one that existed for windows and doors orientation, which actually is left or right for the swing, but this is the one we want, the one that I created earlier here. And then we want to also have area, surface area, and then for separating out doors and windows, then I think we want also, let's see, we have wall area. I think this, we have gross surface area, because that'll include all of the openings, if that's what you want, of the wall, perhaps on the outside face. Let's do that. And let's do the window and door, and we'll say window and door surface area on the, let's say on the reveal side. Let's do that. So this is optional. Now the surface area here might report the same for both. Let's just see how this works. We want to sort by orientation. So in other words, we're going to be grouping here by the cardinal directions or the orientation directions. And then we'll want to see the ID of it and other things. So let's just see what happens when I do that. So we can see that we've got a schedule. We're going to take this down a little bit smaller, and let's just put in area here. So I'm just, the names of these are longer, so I'm just replacing them with the word area, and then let's analyze it. So we can see some funny differences. I'm not sure what the heck this window area here compared to that is. This is, we're sorting by the east side, so we had, so these numbers here, I don't actually know whether they're walls or doors or windows, because I haven't been paying attention to these. So we'll probably want to say what type of element it is. So we'll say type, and we'll say element type. and slip that in here. So now, call this type. So now we have the orientation, whether it's a wall or window, etc. Now, if I want to group these by the orientation, I can say show headline, and now we can see them sorted and say all these things there. If we scroll over, actually, if we close this one in the side, we can see that those ones that I picked that were very specific for walls or for windows do break up separately. So this gives us some clarity. Now, we're not totaling anything right now, so we need to go into the scheme settings and just say this surface area one, this one is sort of confusing. I'm not quite even sure what it's reporting or what unit it has. So let's just get rid of that. And let's look at these and say we want to total this up and total. So we're just by clicking in this column, we do the sigma. If you click again, you'll get a sigma with a number 1. That would say how many of these things you are. If you click again, it turns off. But what we want to do is total up, the actual sum of these things. Now, in addition, let's just do that, and then I'm going to add in the little flag, because what that'll do is it will sum up. If I take this a little wider, it'll sum this up at the very bottom. But what I really want is to sum up every time we change orientation, so we get those numbers. So I click on this little flag for grouping, and then it'll do the totals for the east, the north, the south, and the west, and then a total thing for the total area of everything and the total area of all of the openings. So this is basically what I have in the other file. If we go in here, we can see that we have wall area and opening area. So I've just changed the titles here and orientation and ID. So let's see. Here, we're going to go to the orientation and just call this ID here. And this one is wall area. And this one is opening area. Let's see. So now we're pretty close. And we are now reporting on these walls and grouping them there. We probably want to, if we have this sorted properly, it'll group all the doors together, it'll group all the walls together, group all the windows. You can also do that simply by ID. I think that's what I have in the other file, is that the walls are grouped together here, the doors and windows are grouped, these 2 doors, these 5 windows are grouped in sequence. So you don't actually have to have the element type. That's sort of optional. Here, let me just close this up and say fit this out. So now we have something in both files that work the same. So I hope you enjoyed learning this little process. It combines creating a custom property, in this case orientation, with graphic overrides based on that property, and a schedule that totals up the built-in parameters for wall area and opening area, but uses the orientation field as a way of grouping. So this is something that you can do yourself if you find it useful. Hope you enjoyed this and learned a few things. And if you'd like to have a template that has this built in, as well as hundreds of other clever, productive, efficient, best practices methods built into the file structure, check out MasterTemplate 24, the latest and greatest of, how long have I been doing this? Since 2007. So this is like the 14th year that I've been doing MasterTemplate, helping Archicad users get the most out of the software. This has been Bobrow. Thanks for watching.